In this video, I discuss why you should be very careful telling your boss early that you're retiring. Coming up next on Holy Schmidt.
Holy Schmidt!
I remember it as if it was yesterday. I left the firm where I was working to take a job at another firm, and I didn't know that other firm very well, but my boss had moved there about a year earlier, and so I followed my boss. Now, the truth is, had he not been there, I probably would have left anyway because the culture at the company I was working at had become quite toxic, particularly without my boss there to handle the politics. What I didn't count on, though, was the amount of structural challenges at the new firm. He did tell me about them, to be fair, but when someone tells you about a problem and when you experience it firsthand, sometimes it feels like two different things. Everything looks charming when you're looking for a reason to leave. The technology at the new firm isn't nearly as sophisticated as the technology at the old firm. That's charming. The old firm was too tech heavy anyway. Winning clients is harder at the new firm than it was at the old firm. That's charming. It will give me an opportunity to shine. The commute is longer. Charming. I can actually get more work done on the train. That way I don't have to bring it home. But when it takes a lot more effort to get the same job done, only then do you realize that the problems aren't charming. They're problems. And when you add to that the fact that people working there have accepted the fact that all of these problems exist and are still there anyway, well, you have staff that's somewhat disengaged. And I discuss these problems with my old boss regularly. And after a few years of working at the firm, we both agreed that at some point, one or both of us was going to leave. And if we didn't leave together, one would open up an opportunity at the next firm, if possible, for the other. So I went first. And when I walked in to resign, I expected him to say, "Good for you, tell me about it." But at that moment, he became a company man, defending all of the issues that a week earlier we had both discussed as big problems at the company. My 2 weeks notice became exactly 2 days, and then I was told I didn't need to come back. And this is someone I considered a friend. The reason I tell you this is because you may think that the way that your conversation will go with your boss may play out one way and you consider him a friend, but it is very likely that it will not go the way you think it's going to go. Know that your relationship with your boss is one of mutual dependence. They love you, need you, can't live without you, but when you tell them that you're leaving, all of a sudden the game changes. I remember an interview I sat in on back in 2021 with William Shatner. For those of you who don't know William Shatner, he is a 90-year-old man. Actually, he's about 95 today. And he was the star of the television series Star Trek. But what a lot of people don't realize is that William Shatner not only starred in Star Trek, that's the one that he's most famous for, at least most people think so, but he also starred in 7 or 8 other television series, including Boston Legal. And in this forum, there were no cameras running. He was talking about how in Hollywood, stars that work on a series together become more than just friends. They become almost like family. And at the end of the series, they almost all vow to stay together. But most don't actually stay together. As Boston Legal came to a close, he was saying goodbye to his co-star James Spader. And it is well known, or was well known at the time, that William Shatner and James Spader were really good friends. And as they're saying their goodbyes, they both vowed to stay together. But because Bill knew how Hollywood worked, even though he was saying the words, he thought, this is probably the last time I will see James Spader, at least in any great length. And he was correct. They ran into each other from time to time, but they never worked on another project again together, and they didn't attend birthday parties or any of the other things that people would expect to happen when someone is more than just a co-star. They're someone who's like family. So if you think that because you have this great relationship with your boss, it's appropriate to give him or her 3 months notice or 6 months notice or a year's notice in some circumstances, the first thing I would recommend is look at those who've come before you and see what happened to them, because that's a pretty good indication of what might happen to you if you give too long of a notice period. And even if you have a great boss, by the way, there's a whole chain of people that he has to talk to once you resign, even if it's to retire. And someone in that chain might not have the same view of you as your boss does. In many organizations, once you resign, you're no longer on the team. You're not part of the solution, part of the mission anymore. They may have good intentions, but you're different once you say that I'm resigning. I even heard a story a couple of weeks ago about someone who gave 6 months notice, and in their written agreement, it was stated that they needed to give 2 weeks notice. The employer responded with, well, you only are required to give 2 weeks notice, not at least 2 weeks notice, so you can leave in 2 weeks. In doing the right thing, they lost 5.5 months worth of income, 5.5 months worth of health insurance, and very importantly, 5.5 months worth of planning time. All of a sudden, they went from doing the right thing to scrambling to pay their bills. They hadn't even filed for Social Security yet, and their intention was to file 4 months before they left so that it was available when they walked out the door. Speaking of Social Security, if you're struggling to understand how Social Security fits together for you, don't just do what a friend or family member did, because they aren't you, and their financial situation isn't your own. And the fact is, many people spend more time thinking about their long weekend than they do their Social Security. And this is a big mistake for the single most important financial asset in many people's retirement lives. I just released a course called Social Security Simplified, which takes people from beginner to confident in less than 5 hours. And because it's brand new, it's 50% off until Labor Day, but you have to move fast. Go to my website, holyschmidt.com/social security to learn more. Now, a lot of times they do allow you to stay, but it's pretty common to take you off of big projects and put you onto busy work. We hear about that all the time. And it's not because they're trying to punish you in any way, but because they don't want someone working on something long-term that's going to be their short-term. And let me tell you, there's nothing more disheartening than doing the busy work that you did back at the beginning of your career, 30 years earlier, doing it again at the end of your career. Instead of working with clients, you're working with internal stakeholders. Instead of making big decisions that drive the future of the company, you're working on spreadsheets and looking for errors in those spreadsheets. Then there are other issues. You lose flexibility. Once you give notice, oftentimes you can't undo that if your situation changes. And giving 3 or 6 months or 1 year's notice, there's a good chance your situation can change during that time. And the reason isn't even bad will. A lot of times when someone leaves the company, if they keep you on for the time that you're there, the remaining time that you're there, they have time to find a replacement. They have time to elevate a person. They have time to consider whether the job needs to be automated or not. There are a lot of reasons why you can't stay, and none of them are because they're trying to punish you for leaving. And to be fair to the company, good companies won't wait until you leave to figure out what they do next. Good companies actually have succession planning for the people at the top, and maybe people in the middle and at the bottom as well. So if you find yourself in a position where your retirement plans have changed, you may not have the option to stay, even if you want to. The other issue is what happens to your compensation in areas like bonuses. Companies that provide people with large discretionary bonuses as part of their overall compensation provide that bonus for 2 things. The first is for the work that you do, or did, and the second is to keep you happy so that you don't go to the competition. This is particularly true where outcomes in companies are based on the work that people do and the contacts that they have, their network, and not on the company itself. So if you have a big Rolodex and you're leaving with your Rolodex, well, they don't really have an incentive to give you a larger bonus than necessary to keep you happy. Let's also talk about your post-career plans. A lot of times people don't leave their job and go straight into retirement. They'll consult or they'll work part-time, or if something comes up, they're happy to do it. So be very careful what you sign, because oftentimes if you plan on consulting or doing something in the ecosystem that you were in before, you may be violating part of your agreement. Now, I go back to my original point about telling my boss and my friend that I was leaving. If you're planning on retiring and doing basically what you're doing now, but just part-time here and there, and you've signed something that says you won't do that, you should have your agreement looked at by an employment lawyer. When I left the first company to go work with my boss, one of the people who worked there actually called me up and said, "Be careful how you exit." Now, I had no signed agreement that said that I couldn't take clients with me, but it was a very clear message. People get very, very upset if they're going to lose revenue to the competition, even if you're the competition. Also, make sure you understand your vesting policies and break points with things like your 401k, or if you're lucky enough to have a defined pension plan, your defined pension plan. Oftentimes, if you leave your company before you're age 65, you can do it and you can still get your pension, but your pension payment drops between 5 and 7% per year every year before age 65. But each plan is different, so check yours. And I will point out that you should be sure about this decision. We all go through points in our lives where something goes wrong, and it often lasts for longer than you want to. And it seems like as we get older, the length gets longer and longer, and the problem becomes more and more dire. So make sure that you're not confusing the fact that something's going wrong in your life with the fact that you want to leave your job. And in these situations, my strong recommendation is to take your time. Don't make a hasty decision in a few days or even a few weeks. Take a few months if you need to. Talk to your spouse. Talk to your best friend. Make sure they don't work for the company that you work for, of course, because you want to have the discussion confidentially, but get other opinions. Because sometimes the things that you're thinking about are right as issues, but wrong as the source. Someone going through a bad divorce happens to be in the same industry as their spouse. Happens all the time. People meet in the same industry and spend time in the same industry. People get confused with the fact that they don't like their spouse with the fact that they don't like the industry. And even if you're not at the same company, well, oftentimes people conflate the problem and they leave the job because they're leaving their spouse. And even if it turns out to be the job, don't use the opportunity to stick it to your boss, so to speak. Early notification so that you can tell your employer in the heat of the moment rarely works out the way that you think it will work out. And sometimes you're just tired and it is time to resign, but no one's done anything wrong. I remember a quote from the football coach of the University of Alabama, Nick Saban. He said, "I knew it was time to resign when I stopped getting excited about winning, and I was just relieved that we won." And maybe retirement isn't what you want at all. Maybe you just want to leave the company that you're at because you're in a rut. Maybe you're burned out. Maybe you have a few more years left in you and you actually enjoy the career, just not where you're at. That's also an option. I hear this from people who are in the C-suite of the companies that they work in all of the time. CEOs, CFOs, COOs. These are people that are at the top of their careers, but they don't like the politics. It's gotten too much. But what they need isn't to retire. They just need to leave the company where they're at and go to a different company. So know that if you're going to go from income to no income, and it's not about your desire to retire, it's just to escape, well, maybe you can find another place that will pay you an income. If this is the case, make sure that you read all of your documents carefully, talk to an employment lawyer to make sure that their understanding of what you signed is your understanding of what you signed, and don't expect your boss to take you up on 3 or 6 or 9 months notice, particularly if you're going to end up going to the competition someplace else. It happens. They do it. There are relationships that do work out this way, but there are more relationships that don't in the business world. As a reminder, don't forget to check out my course, Social Security Simplified. It's 50% off until Labor Day. Go to holyschmidt.com/social security to learn more. And if you like this video, check out that video, things you can now do at age 62 that you couldn't do before. This is Jeff Schmidt, and I will see you in that video right there.